Hi, everybody. I'm Tanisha Carino, for those of you that have not met me. I'm the new executive director of FasterCures, and I'm delighted to be here. And I'm going to keep this really short, and I'm still trying to rub the tears out of my eyes after that very moving comment. This workshop was planned before I even got here, and what's exciting to me is that I think I was at one of the very first meetings at FDA to even talk about patient engagement with the National Health Council. And at that time, there was such an emphasis on how do we make this rigorous? How do we turn something that isn't science into science? And there was this idea that qualitative research and some of the different disciplines that we are all recognizing that are vital to what it is we want to do needed to be put on a different level. I want to also thank our colleagues at FDA that are here and acknowledge that, yes, I do think that we're missing a number of people from the healthcare delivery arena as well. And one of the tasks that I would love to ask you to do is to send us a note on whose perspective was missing. Mary, I acknowledge anthropology is an incredibly important discipline, that you are probably sole anthropologist. I don't know how many of us, aside from me, are sociologists. Very good, Marilyn. But these are disciplines that have long tried to understand how you get at this idea of beliefs and values and how we create infrastructure or rules or laws. I want to also acknowledge that this could not have been done without the tremendous support of the National Academies of Science and hosting us here, the planning committee, Carolyn, you and Morgan and the team really pulling us together. And Cindy's quote in the very beginning with Henry Ford was really, really just illustrative. We're together in this room, we're having this great conversation. And I know that we've all been at these meetings over the past few years, but the conversation really is evolving, and it's getting deeper and it's getting more specific. And the more that we come together and spend this time together, the more that I do believe that we'll see things advance. I want to also just acknowledge that when we started this work, I remember getting on the phone with the team and saying, research agenda. I don't know, I can get excited about a research agenda. What is it that we're actually talking about? And I think that this discussion really highlighted that. There are legitimately research that needs to be done to improve the state of the field. And we've identified numerous areas where there needs to be more research. At the same time, there's also the acknowledgement that it's not just a research agenda. If we use a very broad sense of it, it's also sharing best practices that continues to be important, making things faster and more efficient by sharing templates. This idea of how do we move this in an open source, pre-competitive space so that we can go faster and collectively go faster as a community is really important. And it's something that as we are really funneling down the input we're getting, I wanted to just acknowledge that there is definitely going to be work on the research agenda, but we've already brought up questions around workforce, because ultimately, I agree with John Bridges, I don't think he's here anymore. Oh, there you are, John. At the end of the day, when any of us who've ever been operators think about creating something like patient engagement, it always comes down to people and leadership and culture change and a different set of expectations and training and skills. And so getting a research agenda is just that first step to begin to not only say what are the questions we should be answering, but who should be answering those questions. I think that we all can acknowledge that we have great skills in each of our organizations, but they're by far not the only skill sets. And in fact, we're creating a workforce that we're going to have to pull different disciplines that may not have ever thought about a career in drug development. And that's a really exciting opportunity for us, is to really expand that. And the only other thing I wanted to leave you with is when I listen to Teresa and all of you, there's always this feeling I get of this idea of hearts and minds. Like nothing, we compel no one to do anything different without trying to tug on both their hearts and minds. And when our colleague Jennifer from Evidation showed that slide where she showed that dichotomy, I had it written down, of invisible to visible or subjective to objective or clinical to meaningful, these are not a transition from one to the other, but rather how do we take what is really messy data, because it's about our own patient experiences, and how do we find ways of understanding that data, engaging with partners to make sure that the way that we're understanding data is truly meaningful, and creating an expectation for how do you triangulate that with how we've always done drug development. And I can't imagine in any organization that this isn't going to be a multi-year effort to change expectations. And it's really less about the skill sets. It's much more about integrating in our cultures and organizations and our values what this expectation is. So it doesn't matter whether you're a pharma company, if you're FasterCures, if you're a hospital, almost everybody in the healthcare system is trying to get closer to that patient voice, because ultimately I think we all recognize that that's why we're all here. And so I do want to acknowledge that this is a great discussion. We're going to come out with a lot of information that is both going to be the basis of a research agenda, but hopefully the basis of a bigger journey around the culture change and the leadership expectations and the workforce that we're going to need for each of us to be successful. So with that, I'd like to turn to Marilyn and Cindy to really close this out and hopefully get you guys out of here 15 minutes early.